Welcome to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience. Mike, we've had a big week this week with Governor Cuomo in New York. He asked for an investigation into the sexual harassment allegations, and I don't know if it was if he wanted the results that actually came out. But what came
What do they
about
say?
was
Be careful what you ask for.
right. He got a 178 or 73 page document alleging not just the sexual harassments that that were there during that time, but they went back and looked for other people, and so it comes in this report. So, what say you, Mike?
I didn't do it. That's all I can say. I didn't do it, man. I gotta tell you, I'm not stunned by the behavior. I mean, there's an arrogance that comes with some people that are in power, and it doesn't matter at the local level, the state level, the federal level. There's that certain arrogance that people have, and he certainly portrays that. He is completely unlike his father. I remember his father very well, and he is completely unlike his father. But what struck me is, so his defense, because I mean that's kind of the business that we're in, right? It's like, we usually people don't call us to help them when they're getting ready to grope somebody. They're calling us after they grope somebody and then got caught, or something similar. And what struck me is his defense is absolutely indefensible. He did almost like a bibliography. This is your life, Governor Cuomo, of different pictures of him hugging people, kissing people, touching people, and all to create the image that, well, this is the way I am. I'm a huggy, kissy kind of guy. And people are like that. And I will say, especially Italians, we're very emotional people. If you want to really, kill an Italian, you tie their hands together and they can't move them, and then they just explode. That's what happens. It's a well-known natural phenomenon. But what struck me was, he equates this, and there are pictures of him hugging people and, holding their hand, obviously in a moment of concern and care and stuff like that. And he says that this is his normal behavior, and that's all they've cited. And then I just want to read this section from a very liberal newspaper called the New York Times. It says, the governor placed his finger on the back of the trooper's neck, a New York state trooper, standing behind her in an elevator at his Manhattan office, tracing the path of her spine with a 2-word narration. Hey, you. Sometimes he asked questions. Why didn't she wear a dress? Why pursue marriage when your sex drive goes down afterward? Could he kiss her? And sometimes he made statements. He remarked that his ideal girlfriend could handle pain, which would probably be watching his press conferences. He said that the trooper in her late 20s was too old for him. He directed her to say nothing of their conversations. The trooper was perhaps most unsettled after an event on Long Island in 2019. As she held a door open for him, she felt the palm of his hand on her belly button, pressing towards her right hip where she kept her gun. I felt completely violated, she later told investigators. But, I'm here to do my job. So, that is what this report is about. It is not about giving hugs to people or seeing someone you haven't seen and you give them a kiss on the cheek or stuff like that, which you have to be careful of these days. Freely admit that. But his argument that this is his the way he was brought up, or the way it's been, or this is the way he is. If that's the way he is, then really he should be in jail. He should be, forget being governor of New York. I mean, he should be in jail because he's doing this to a state trooper.
Yeah, Mike, one of his defenses that you kind of indicated is he's from a different culture. This is the way things were 20, 30 years ago when he was brought up, and this is the way things were. I'm looking at this report and I'm like, where was the manual on this 20, 30 years ago? This isn't the way you treat anyone back then, now, or anywhere in between.
Well, as someone that grew up in an Italian-American family 20 or 30 years ago, I'd like to know where the hell that manual is, because I didn't see anything that says you can go around grabbing people like that or behaving like that or using your power like that. To put it bluntly, is bullshit. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's an arrogance of power that he has, that he is above others, above the law, above reproach, even by his own president, by his own Democrat Party. And to me, I'm just truly amazed that his defense of all of this was, number one, he does a pre-release statement where he attacks the Attorney General in the report, which, as you said, is a report that he asked for and supported. And, the Attorney General is his person. And, where he releases a bibliography of all these pictures of him, touching, hugging, whatever people. And, even the President of the United States, who has his own bibliography out there, if you wanted to go look at it, there's many pictures of him, standing behind somebody's wife who's getting sworn into a appointed position within the Obama administration. And, he's rubbing her neck. And you could clearly see how uncomfortable this woman is about that. All of this kind of stuff of that's the way we were brought up. That's not the way people were brought up. I don't remember any time where you were brought up that it's okay to go to a state trooper of all people and grab them by the belly button and then start moving your hand on their hip. Where I was brought up, if you did that, first of all, the trooper would probably shoot you. And then if she didn't shoot you when you got home, your parents would shoot you for doing something as stupid as that. This Italian ain't buying none of that, believe me.
Well, neither is this Mexican. But, the interesting part is now the Attorney General for the state of New York, it doesn't seem as though she's filed anything. The report came out that he violated not only state law, but federal law.
Right.
And I guess what everyone's waiting for is, okay, so when are you going to file? If he violated all these different laws, when are you going to file? Now, granted, I know they're from the same political party, but, we still wait for that. But there are some district attorneys, in various counties that are looking to bring up charges against Cuomo. And the big thing, as you indicated, President Joe Biden came out and said that he should step down. You've got people from his own party that are now saying, hey, you need to step down.
Right.
But Cuomo's indicating he's not going to step down.
Right. And they're now saying, well, we'll wait to see him get impeached, which, by the way, I think is a cop-out. And I'm glad you brought that up. It's a cop-out because if Joe Biden's Justice Department is so hell-bent on going after the former president for some kind of financial misdoings, then you sure as hell would think, since they're located in the Southern District of New York, that same Justice Department would be looking at a governor who clearly, because of the way the Attorney General presented this information and these facts, I'm not saying he's guilty of it in a court of law, but there's certainly enough evidence to say charges should be brought, both on a state or federal level. And why hasn't anyone said, let's go do that? It's a very interesting thing because it's easy to say you should step down, you should step down, you should step down. It's another thing to do something about it. And they're waiting on the New York, I think, Assembly, not the Senate, but the Assembly, I think, that will, have to do the impeachment process. But why, it's a great question. Why is not the Attorney General or any of these political figures who are denouncing this saying that, legal action should be taken against this guy? Because clearly, with what was laid out, there's surely enough evidence to get indictments.
So now we look at the United States, kind of look at it at the bookend, right? You got New York, and you got in a month and a half, potentially the governor of California could lose in a recall, and so you have two individuals who, for all intents and purposes, were ready to go in a couple of years, running for president, potentially, pitting themselves up against a Kamala Harris. I mean, Kamala Harris looks like the winner in these things, in this particular battle. Especially, things don't go well over for Gavin Newsom here in California.
Well, you're right. First of all, you're right. I mean, she to be the fly on the wall in that office again, to hear what she's saying and thinking, because both of those people. I mean, Gavin Newsom, comes with a huge constituency out here. the support that he would get in the West, which could eat at some Republican base. Cuomo, same thing. Both of them flush with money, and both of them having been on a national stage. In 5 weeks, 6 weeks, both of them could be history. And I will tell you, I think in 5 or 6 weeks, one of them will be history. And I don't think it's going to be Mario Cuomo, because I know how feet dragging happens back east. I think it's going to be Gavin Newsom, because he is not, a slippery slope doesn't begin to define where he stands right now. And that opens the door, really, assuming tongue in cheek, Joe Biden decides not to run again in 2024. That really does open the door. I don't know anybody that would have that same kind of national presence as a Cuomo or a Newsom would have in the Democrat Party nationally to go up against the sitting vice president.
Yeah, but even if Cuomo does survive the impeachment, does survive some sort of removal of office, he's damaged goods. I mean, maybe he can win again in New York. I don't know, but the thing is that how does he try to win some of these battleground states?
He won't. I mean, he is from that. Truly, when that report came out, if he had, and again, it goes to the attitude that people have of they are bigger than anyone else. They are bigger than anything else. They are bigger than their state. They are bigger than their party. They are bigger than their country. They are bigger than the people that elect them. And that's exactly how Cuomo is. Because if he had any compunction whatsoever, or as we call in Italian, a face, the face, you never want to embarrass your family. If he had any of that whatsoever, he'd step down now. He'd say, I'm going to go fight this. These things are wrong. I'm going to go fight them, but I'm not going to drag my state through it. We've got enough problems in our state that, whoever's sitting in this chair has to spend 110% of their time in that. He won't do that. He just won't, because that's the arrogance of power that exists there. But he's done on a national level, and he should be. I mean, seriously, the guy, should be on trial for some of this stuff. And it's just amazing, that it was allowed to happen the way it happened. But I do think, and I'm gonna, it's early August here, people, and the bookie in me is now open, and the bookie is predicting that come September 15th, there will be a new governor of California. The polling that we just saw this past week on the recall is devastating for Newsom. Devastating. And it's not just the whole number of, I think it's like 49% opposed the recall, 46% are for the recall. That means nothing. The two numbers that struck me there is, I think it was 55% of Hispanic voters support the recall, and 23% of Democrat voters support the recall. I mean, those are, for a Democrat candidate, those are terrible numbers, because it doesn't matter who you're running against. And we've talked about how it may not be the strongest field in the world that's running. People don't want him. And that's a tough thing to overcome in a recall situation where it's not a one-on-one of Gavin Newsom against Larry Elder, or Gavin Newsom against Kevin Faulkner, or Gavin Newsom against, what's her name, Angeline or Angelique or whatever the heck her name is.
The porn star.
Right, the porn star. It's Gavin Newsom against Gavin Newsom. I mean, that's question one. It's Gavin Newsom against Gavin Newsom, and right now he's losing because people. And by the way, for good reason.
Yeah, well, let's put this in perspective. So in January, the number of Hispanics that supported the recall was at 23%. It is now at 54%.
Right.
And so it is just going in the wrong direction. And the thing is that as we've talked about several times, the issues are getting worse and worse for Gavin Newsom.
Right.
And we've got another fire that just started up again. So we've got a major fire, burned over 200,000 acres. Cities being evacuated. Crime on the rise. you've got COVID cases that are some of the. I mean, we just got the report from the World Health Organization that the United States is now one of the worst, people of the numbers of people who are getting COVID.
Mm-hmm.
California is obviously going in the wrong direction with that situation. Where now you've got over half of the state is now requiring mandatory masks, and so
Going backwards.
Yeah, and so it's a tough time for Gavin. But let me one quick point back on Cuomo, which I forgot to mention, and I think it's very important, is about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we had this entire movement of the Me Too movement. But I think what Cuomo is showing is, I'm for Me Too as long as it doesn't deal with me.
Right.
And so
Perfect.
The thing is like, how do you, I'm good. I'm waiting to see the actresses, the stars, everyone else start coming out, the civil rights groups coming out and tear him down.
Where's Al? Where's Big Al Sharpton? I mean, that's the kind of thing. You're absolutely right.
And this entire movement that obviously has taken down quite a bit of individuals, because, I mean, look at the amount of press, look at the amount of tearing down that they did, not just, they did for Donald Trump, but they've done for other folks. Well,
they did it. The one I always come back to, because he was an early casualty of the Me Too movement. And I was never a political fan of his. I was a comedic fan of his. Is Al Franken.
Al Franken, yeah.
The former SNL actor, former United States Senator from Minnesota. I mean, as left can be. But, all of the stuff that he did and the skits and the things he said and the stuff that happened all comes back to bite him in the midst of this Me Too movement. And then after that, so he steps down from his Senate seat to because of this. And then a few months later, you have the audio tape of Donald Trump and Billy Bush, and that creates a big brouhaha. And then all other kinds of things. And now today, you've got this report about Cuomo. It really is the kind of thing where people, it's going to be interesting to see if people step up to the plate. Again, it's easy for these folks to say, yeah, he should resign. Yeah, he should resign. But who's going to do something about it? Who is going to step into the breach and say, we're filing a complaint? Or, which attorney, who's going to be directing a U.S. attorney to say, investigate, look at the evidence that's been presented. If there's sufficient evidence, and I don't know how it wouldn't be, you file a proper case against it. Or the Human Rights Commission, or, all of these other groups that are out there that are supposed to protect employees. What about unions? I mean, I'm sure these people were union members. Are they going to step up to the plate and do what's right? Because what he did, politics aside, was so wrong, it's not funny.
Well, I'm waiting to see the marches on his residence. That will be a true tell if the Me Too movement is really one movement that affects everyone politically, or it's just a certain, as long as
right.
it affects.
It depends on who it is.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and compared to that, Gavin's got to walk in the park. He's got wildfires that are going on, that are out of control. Now you got people turning on the spigots of their faucet and no water's coming out. Right. I was listening to someone from the California Water Resources Board today on the radio talking about why farmers, are bad people because they want to use water in California to grow things. And they've turned off the faucets to the farmers so they can't grow things, which, not only affects the food supply, but it certainly affects our economy because of the strength of the agricultural industry in this state. We're in the midst of a drought that, we've had droughts before and nobody's done anything to fix the systemic problems so that we wouldn't encounter these things. So he has that to deal with. You mentioned crime. I mean, I think I saw some number that said 65% of the people in California think that crime is on the rise, and they were worried about it. And my reaction was, what the hell are the other 35% of people doing? And then I realized they're probably the ones committing the crimes. So they're probably enjoying all of this. But that's a huge number for one single issue, and we've talked about that. And the other one is, and there's other things that are going to pop up. That's the other part about this is, and I'll tell you one I think that's going to pop up is the fact that the eviction moratorium on the national level ended about a week ago, and so there's all these people yelling and screaming about getting evicted. California got from the federal government, the American Rescue Plan, about $5.2 billion for the state to pay for the rent of people who needed it or to their landlords, so the landlords could be made whole as part of their rent during the pandemic from like March of 20 until 21, June or July of 21. The money was given and it literally was, I think, $5.2 billion in the American Rescue Plan to the state of California. Only a few million have been given out because of administrative and bureaucratic problems. So you got stuff like that where there's competence involved, but people are getting hurt. Honestly, I think, I don't know. I think I really think that his time is coming to an end. And so it's going to be a question, who's there on September 15th?
Well, as we're recording this podcast, the debate, the first Republican debate's going to happen or the first gubernatorial debate on the recall is going to happen within a few minutes. And while we could make some predictions right now about the debate. Obviously, when we have this podcast up, it'll have already occurred. But I guess I got a couple friends of mine to ask me, does this really matter? Does the debate really matter? Are Republicans or those that are at the debate, is it going to change anything? Is it going to move the needle anywhere? And, I began to think about it. And my response to one of them was, I think it is, because as you look at the polling number, it's about intensity. And so the people that are going to watch this are those that are going to be maybe on the Republican side, maybe some independents looking to say, okay, who's the alternative? And it's going to be that intensity. I really don't know if many Democrats will end up watching it or care to watch it. And, that's kind of one of the issues that is hurting Gavin right now is the lack of intensity from Democrats wanting to, whether they're going to turn out or not.
The one thing I agree with you on the intensity. The one thing if I were him, I'd be concerned about with the Democrats, it's not even intensity of turnout. It's just support. I've run a lot of campaigns. All of my campaigns really have been run in blue states, okay? Running Republicans in heavily Democrat states. And there's always been kind of a formula. You want to get 90% of the Republican vote, which in some of these states equates to about 6 or 7 people, because there's not many Republicans in them. And you want to get about 50 to 55% of the independents. And then you want to kind of carve off about 10 to 15% of the Democrats. In this state, it's completely opposite. You want to get 80%, you get 80% or 90% of the Democrat vote in this state, you're probably pretty solid for an election win. If he's got 23% of Democrats who are saying they're going to vote for the recall, he's got more than an intensity problem. He's got a support problem. And I don't know how you shore that up because they've made a decision. In terms of what you just said, I completely agree with the candidates. They need to make a presentation that makes them credible, that makes people look and say, well, he or she could be better than what we got. They can do the job. I mean, that's what they need to do. I don't think they need to go in and bash him. I think that mission accomplished. I think what they need to do is be able to show people that are going to pay attention to these debates and these discussions that they have the intellectual capability and the competence to be able to govern this state if they should win. And some of them do and some of them don't, But I think that's going to be their challenge. And I think you're right. The Republicans and the decline to states or independents that are watching, that's what they're going to be looking for.
Well, and I think another thing is we'll get a good sense of who people believe is in the lead, or they are the candidate, to watch out for, because that person better bring a helmet, because there's going to be a lot of rock throwing on that person during the debates. And so, we'll see tonight in a few minutes who that person is, because all the knives will be coming out against that person.
You're right. I mean, and what's going to happen, and certainly that's going to happen with Newsom. The guy's got 43 million in his campaign account. You know as well as I do. And let's focus on Larry Elder for a second, because Larry gets into the race, he gets thrown out. Seuss gets back in the race, wins a court case, which I think stunned a lot of people. Now he's on the ballot. He's got name ID. He's got credibility, especially within the conservative area of the party. He's an attractive candidate, very articulate, and the other side sees that. And so, that there's, in campaigns, we call them the dirt devils. They're out there doing, all of the opposition research to find the quote, the thing he said. When you're on the radio, they've taken anything you can, even taking it out of context. I know that's shocking to people, but it happens in politics. Taking it out of context and spending $1 million to ram it down the guy's throat and dirty him up, which they can do. They can try that tactic. But the thing I just wonder about is, so you do that, but how does that still help on question one for them? How does that still help Gavin Newsom get to 50% plus one of people saying don't recall, when you have the kind of numbers he has now and the kind of problems he has now? So I think what you'll see is it reminds me a little of the 2012 Republican nomination for president. You had all of these people running, and on any given week, Newt Gingrich would be the front runner, and then boom, he takes a shot. And then Herman Cain, my man Herman, who was my personal favorite, he gets in, he moves to the front, and then boom, he takes a shot. And then, Rick Santorum comes in, and then they take a shot. And so it was all this kind of back and forth. I think that's what you'll see over the next 5 weeks, is that kind of thing. But I don't think you're going to see the numbers change a whole lot on question one, because I think people are reaching the point of they've made up their mind.
Yeah.
And there's bad stuff out there now. There's more bad stuff coming.
Well, we'll see what happens for this debate that's supposed to occur in a few minutes, and we'll see the outcome, and then maybe we'll do another podcast as to the kind of summarizing what happened at the debate, and really what are the messages that some of these candidates come out from the debate itself. One question I want to ask you is, do you think Gavin Newsom is going to get himself involved in a debate, or should he get into a debate?
No, he won't get involved in a debate. He's got $43 million. Again, the only person he's debating is himself. It's his performance and what he's done, and how, clearly, and I don't know how you do this. I mean, I know how Republicans will piss off 23% of Democrats or 55% of Republicans, but I don't know how a Democrat does that. I mean, that's a real achievement right there. And, for him to be able to do that, and I don't know if that's recoverable. So no, I wouldn't look for him to be in a debate. I wouldn't look for him to be doing one-on-ones. I think he's gonna run his media plan, $10 million and then some probably. He's going to run his ground operation. Because remember, I mean, the election's 5 or 6 weeks out, but I think they're going to start mailing out ballots in about 10 days. Right. So, you'll have voting will be taking place. I think that's what he's going to focus on. I don't see him acknowledging any of the other people that are running. I see his campaign attacking those people, the ones that are credible, that they see as a threat. But I don't see him doing any of that kind of stuff.
And I think for those people that are listening, the thing that makes it very unique with unlike the last recall in 2003, you really had one front runner. You had one person who was on the Republican side, kind of leading the pack of everyone. No one was even close, and that was Arnold Schwarzenegger. So all the knives were out on him. Mm-hmm. In this particular situation, you've got about 3 or 4 of them, and so you're in a way running the final race, or the final election, the only vote that's going to happen against 3 or 4 different people, and so that becomes difficult. So let's say they take out the knives and they slice down Larry Elder. Well, you still have Kevin Faulconer there,
right?
You try slicing him up. Well, that gives time to Larry Elder or someone else to kind of recuperate, and and they can move in the lead. But you're right; it
You're
still doesn't
exactly right.
take care of question number one, which is should Gavin Newsom be recalled? Yes or no? $43 million is quite a bit of money to have in the bank account. It's a lot more, a tremendous amount more than everyone else has. But you're running against 4 to 5 different people, which makes it difficult.
And you're running against your record, and you're running against managing several crises at the same time where people don't have a lot of confidence in your ability because of the COVID, the pandemic, the crime in the streets, the wildfires, the drought, the mismanagement on things like economic development, on the EDD for the state, the unemployment, the closing of businesses. I think he's got all of that. That's his real albatross on his back, not the Republican or independent candidates that are running. I think but you will see. I think you're absolutely right. He's going to start hammering. 1 week he'll hammer Elder, and you'll see Elder go down, and then Faulkner will pop up. It's like then he'll whack-a-mole. Then he'll whack Faulkner, and Faulkner will go down, and then who knows who pops up, OC or Caitlin or whoever. I think the only one that's going to be immune to the whack-a-mole is if we could get John Cox's bear back and run the bear for governor, and then have somebody that can whack back an 1,100-pound Kodiak bear. That might be the only saving grace. But that's what it's going to be the next 5 weeks. But none of that, solves the issue that he has, and also the narrative. I mean, the narrative. Remember, he's spending millions of dollars. You got what's her name, Elizabeth Warren, talking about the Republican recall. His commercials talking about the Republican recall. Well, now he's got a problem, because if a poll says that 23% of your own party supports the recall, guess what? It ain't a Republican recall anymore, especially in a state where, 47, 48% of the population are registered Democrats. So, he's got a lot on his plate, and I don't feel bad for him at all. And, maybe he and Andrew Cuomo can get together and commiserate come September, and, go look for that rule or guide or cultural report that's out there that says you can go do all of these things, because I'm still trying to find that.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about the different issues. Let's work on this. Maybe what we could do is, I'd like to bring in in the next couple of days. Maybe we bring in a water expert to tell us about the drought, to talk about what is happening in California. How are we in this particular situation? And maybe after we bring in an expert on drought and can tell us about water in California, I'd love to be able to see, and I'll try to reach out to our old friend Patrick Dornson, who was the communications director during the time when precipitated the recall with Gray Davis and the recall and the blackouts. It'd be great to get his perspective as to, does he see any parallels? Because as you know, right now we're having big issues with, we've got these flex alerts, there's other shoe drop, which is our lack of energy and lack of power here in California, with all these alerts that we're getting. And what does he see? Because he was in the mix of things over with Gray Davis.
I remember seeing a picture of him on the floor of wherever that was, where I think it's the ISO, or the power grid is there, and he's in the middle of it. And I was like, good luck, pal. It would be great to have him back to talk about that.
Oh, is that the dog there?
Yeah, that's Pearl. She may have some health issues, but she's got no lack of energy.
Well, Mike and Pearl, I guess we'll leave it at that. And
I just said to her, "What do you think of the Cuomo thing?" And that was her reaction. So that's.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
that sums it up.
So, Mike, let's leave it there. Let's get ready to watch this gubernatorial debate that is happening in looks like in about 2 minutes. So we'll watch that, and then we'll get together. We'll get together next day or so, and have a summary of it.
Sounds good. Good talking with you, and thanks for joining, everybody.